Hello and welcome to an extremely special episode of Michael and Mom Talk Cancer. I am your official host, Michael Kramer, and
I am the official mom. I am Ashley, and he is correct. It is extremely, extremely special because we have Dr. Erica Harris. But do you like to go by Dr. Erica, or do you like to go by Dr. Harris, or do you like to go by Erica? Because
You call me Erica.
okay,
Yep.
Erica sounds good. Okay, wait, I showed her before. I have this list of like all these cool things. This woman
well, can I start with
amazing.
a question?
No, yes, okay. Wait, let her say hello.
Yeah, say hello.
First, you better say thank you for being here, but we do have
Thank
this
you.
list of accomplishments and things that you do, and I'm going to touch on them, even if we don't touch on them now, because you want to ask your question. But thank you.
I'm just so happy to be here. I saw Michael on Instagram and I just connected with the message he was propelling, and he had extended the invitation. I was so honored to join your show. So thank you for having me here today.
I was like,
Of course.
ask her. We'll see if she says yes. And you said yes. We were both like, oh my God, she said yes. We feel so humbled and honored. All right, fine. Ask your question before I say all the cool things about her.
It goes back to you finding me on Instagram. When you found me on Instagram, your name is 60 Days to Live.
Yes.
So I think it's a great introduction just to say, what is 60 Days to Live and why is that your Instagram name?
Great question. Yeah. So, and it's 60 Days to Live 2012. And I always like to preface that because, that's a long haul between 2012 and 2023. And I do that to serve as a beacon of hope and just a straight out example of my story right from the get-go. But back in 2012, I had faced this terminal prognosis, believe it or not. I was 35 years young. I had two beautiful babies in tow. I had still been nursing my youngest when I had been diagnosed with this really aggressive version of leukemia. And the whole world that I knew had just literally been ripped out from under my feet. And as you both know so well, with leukemia, everything goes so fast and it's this crazy steep learning curve. And I'd still been nursing my youngest son, and gosh, like, how do you just pull all these pieces together, And I was admitted to hospital right away, and I had failed despite having an 80% chance of success with the first round of chemotherapy, the induction round. And I'll say everything was done 24/7 in hospital. Because with leukemia, your bloodlines are so impacted. It's not just that you have cancer, but you're a risk of clotting, you're a risk of bleeding, you're a risk of infections. And so there's so many different layers with leukemia. Anyhow, I had been admitted right away, and I failed the original round of induction chemotherapy despite these best chances I had been given. By this point, a lot of my genetic testing for the leukemia had come back. I had a very rare version of leukemia that was very aggressive. I was told then 3 weeks later. Now, I want to preface, I had not even complained of feeling sick or unwell.
I was about to ask you,
how did you find out?
How did you find out? And why did you even go in? Because
so with my two boys, I had planned a little date day with my babies, and we were headed off to the Vancouver Aquarium. I live here in Vancouver on the West Coast, and we were going to the aquarium.
We hear your accent. I love it.
Well, I lived in the States for a while too. People comment on that a lot. But anyhow, this was our date day. We were going for a little picnic lunch after. I was all packed, and I had to do this one lab that I had been putting off. And the lab was for just a recheck on my thyroid hormone, because when I had been pregnant with my firstborn son, I was diagnosed with this little thyroid glitch, and I would take a regular pill called Synthroid that would just boost my thyroid hormone a little bit, but they would need to monitor it to make sure that my levels were in check, if that makes sense. Right. And just being a busy mom, I had deferred that, for quite a while. I was well overdue. I hadn't done a lab in, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years since my youngest had been born. And anyhow, so I was going in for this lab. I had both my boys in tow, and I go in for this lab, and then we drive from the lab literally to the aquarium. And I have these two little beaming sets of legs racing ahead, so excited to go and see all of their sea creature friends. And my phone rang, and as I was still tucking the passes back in my envelope or back in my wallet, and I almost didn't answer the call because it was reception is known to be really terrible in the aquarium. But I picked it up on the kind of the last ring, and gosh, there was just this sense of urgency and panic in the voice on the other end of the line. It was like, "Is this Erica Harris? Is this Erica Harris? You need to go to the nearest emergency room and avoid all public places." He identified himself as calling from the lab. And to be honest, like, I'm a sports chiropractor by trade, and I felt I know enough about when you do a lab and things go astray. And I actually felt bad for whoever they were trying to get, but I thought it was too fast for them to get my results back that fast. It might have been 10 minutes from when I left the lab, from when I got this call. And I was like, literally like, "Oh no, you've got the wrong person." Like, I'm the poster child for health and wellness. And I'm like literally standing in the most public of public places in Vancouver. And I'm 100% fine, because they were like, "You have to avoid all public places and go to this nearest emergency room." And I was kind of dumbfounded, but at the same time, I really didn't think it had to do with me. And literally I lost reception, and I didn't think about it for the rest of the day. And I got home, and there were hundreds. I'm not the best with voicemail. I'm really good with text. I got home, and there were hundreds of messages on our home phone, and I dealt with it the next day. And I literally went into my GP's office, and I was just like, no, this is a big mistake. Like, I'm super healthy. I'm really well. And I don't know what's up. And this is when she had come in and told me, "Gosh, you just look like the poster child for health and wellness, And so I was like, let me prove this to you. Like, let me go for another lab. Like, had I even thought that I was sick, I would have had my husband, I would have had some support systems in place. Like, I just wanted to prove them all, like, set the record straight, that I wasn't sick. So I rushed straight downstairs to her lab downstairs, and ended up getting another blood test, and devastatingly it came back showing the same results. And so that's when everything really kicked in, and I had a bone marrow biopsy very quickly thereafter, and it came back showing that I had this acute myeloid leukemia. And so, I had been rushed into the hospital, and again, given this 80% chance of success with the first round, for which I did not respond. And at that point, literally only 3 weeks after I had just been diagnosed, having not complained of feeling sick or unwell, my physicians come in and tell me, "Okay, Erica, you're going to need a round of salvage chemotherapy, followed by a bone marrow transplant." And I was 35 at the time. And I was like, because instantly it denotes, what if? Like, what if that doesn't work? Right. And then that plays on your head. And so they basically said this was the end of the line. There was no other treatment available, given how aggressive my cancer was. And I said, like, this can't be. We were supposed to be at the lake right now for this month-long family trip. Like, I was well, before I came in.
So you didn't have any symptoms, like you weren't tired,
okay,
you didn't.
Okay, so looking back, that's a great question.
Looking back,
as they say, hindsight is 2020, right? And sure, I had some really obvious blaring symptoms, but yet, as a mom, I just thought I thought all young moms of 2 boys running around and chasing a dog and 2 boys were that tired, It got to be a few months.
And you were breastfeeding. It's exhausting to breastfeed.
So I also had some hormonal changes. I was getting some night sweats, but everything was chalked up to something else. The other weird thing that I had as a sports chiropractor, this was not good. This was hard for me, because I ended up developing this really bizarre rash, and I'm not a rash girl, but I had this really bizarre rash, like on the dorsal surface of both hands.
Was it itchy?
Eyelids. Pardon?
Was it itchy?
No, but it was like really thick and plaque-like, and very sore, very sore. And then on my eyelids, like, who gets a rash on their eyelids, And that had been for about a year before. And I think it was literally like my body screaming at me, "Wake up, something's wrong. Like, you've got to change the course here." But I was oblivious to it all. I just thought all young moms were this tired. I did go to see dermatology and naturopathic physicians about this rash, and they all just kept saying, "Erica, you've developed this new allergy." But I was kind of like, well, I haven't eaten anything differently, I'm not in a new environment. Like, it just seems so odd. And I don't know if it was related or not, but after my treatment, like, I've never had that rash again. So who knows? I really do think, looking back, my body was absolutely screaming at me. And this is something I talk to my coaching clients about a lot, about hearing the screams of our body, like, really early on. So yes, I say I had no symptoms. And I hadn't complained of feeling sick or unwell. But in retrospect, of course, there were definitely symptoms that we can all overlook so readily and not connect, you know?
Definitely.
Oh, I just have a little bit of fatigue, or oh, I just have like these bizarre night sweats. But I had had these same night sweats in my early 20s, and it was really investigated because they were very extensive. And it was told that I had just been having hormonal changes with my cycle from exercising so much. And these sweats
Right.
that I was then getting seemed to be cyclical as well with my cycle. And I was still nursing. So it all kind of added up, you know, and you can offset these things being so focused on everyone else aside from yourself,
I was
you know?
just gonna. It's like the conversation I have. I know that you are the survivor, you are the patient, but it's the conversation I have with caregivers a lot. Is that we overlook oftentimes our own health and our own symptoms because you were a caregiver, obviously, for your family. Plus, you had a full time job and you had a wellness center. I saw this about you. So we do overlook those things because I think I would be the same as you. You know, you're breastfeeding. You have two babies. Of course, you're tired. Of
Yeah.
course, you know, those things probably didn't even come into your thoughts. You're worried about everyone else and not yourself as
And my
well.
youngest had struggled with asthma as a babe, and he had been hospitalized, you know, and my only goal was for him to thrive, and my whole focus was on that, you know, and I just didn't spend the time to look inwards. And as they
So
say on the airplane, you know, you have to put on your mask first. And I
We
think
have a
that's
thing about
she has
that.
a thing
We
right.
that,
have a thing about that.
yeah, but I want to ask you, what was the support like? Because you obviously have a really supportive family. What was it like?
I
Well,
have to say, I had like 60 people come to see me every day in that hospital
I
room.
saw that, but that's overwhelming.
I was never, yeah, I'll say on the flip side of that too, but I was never alone. My girlfriends would come and read at night when my husband was home tucking in my kids.
Right.
Um, Family support was absolutely incredible. Even the team at the hospital, physician wise, nurses, like the lunch ladies, the cleaners, everybody along the way, they
Do you
just
think
like
that
lift you
We
up with love, you know what
do
I
you
we
think
mean?
that
felt
put a lot
that.
of
We felt
pressure
that
on?
too.
Because I've had a lot of support, and there were certain times where I felt like sometimes there was too many people watching me, and there was points where I wanted to be able to be sad and be okay with being sad. And I've had people just want me to be positive and say, you can't be sad, you have to be positive. So was there ever a point where you felt like there was so much pressure from all the support you had?
Great point, Michael. People say things, you know,
Yeah, people say things
and it's
for
hard,
sure.
and some of that you don't want to pick up that energy, you know, and they don't do it to hurt you. They just do it because they don't know, they haven't been in that
They
situation,
don't
Right.
know.
right? And um but no, I completely agree. This is when I had these 60 people come to see me every day, I was very much on autopilot. I'm going to be fine, no problem, you know, this is just a little blip on the path. What can I get you from my water fountain, you know, ice or no ice? And I just wouldn't let it sink in, you know. And then one day, we had to hire this new nanny who would help, and she brought my kids in to see me. And all of a sudden, I was just struck by her presence. She was a complete stranger, having access to our family's most vulnerable and most intimate of moments. And she was like taking care of, you know, my most precious little beings, you know. And did she realize how precious they were? My kids were on the bed with me, and she was just in the corner of the room. And I just remember feeling so struck. And then she left with them. And I watched her load my babies into my vehicle down below, and because I could see out of my penthouse view above, and like I just panicked instantly. I felt institutionalized against my will. I felt confined. I felt trapped. Like I felt like I had no power over my own life, you know, and my babies were about to drive away with a complete stranger.
And this was during chemo?
Yeah, yeah.
When,
This is when I
Yeah.
was in the salvage chemo. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, um, is she gonna speed? Is she gonna shoulder check? You know, is she gonna drive safely home? Like I wanted to be the one driving home,
Of
driving my
course.
babies home.
yeah.
I wanted to make them dinner. I wanted to tuck them in. That was
Of
my job,
course.
you know. And I turned around from that window, and I was really never alone at this point in my hospital room. And I slunk down to the floor, and I just wept. And I wept and I wept and I wept, and I really didn't stop crying for days. And at first, Michael, like you said, it was finally allowing, you know, those silent tears that I would weep at night when no one was in the room. Um, I really felt so wholeheartedly that if I would cry about my future, if I would cry, I was not being positive and I was going to ruin my chances of success. Like,
Oh my
it's
gosh, we
so
can
messed up,
relate. We can
the
just
pressure you can
relate.
put on yourself, And, but then in the day when people would be there, I'd be like, oh, again, what can I get you? Come watch me on the bike, And like, it just wasn't even happening. But then this day, after my nanny took my kids home, I was by myself and I just slumped down and I like grabbed my knees into my chest with my back against the wall. And I was in this fetal position. And yeah, I just wept. And I wept about all these moments that had just been stolen from me from cancer, about, having to stop nursing my youngest, having to miss my oldest, his 5th birthday party that I had planned for months, not getting to go to the lake with my family for this quality time that we had planned out for so long. Like, so much I had to weep that was just taken, and even when you're saying all these people that come to visit you, like, as much as I loved it and that support was uplifting, it was also brutally hard because they get to go home. They get to go to work.
Right,
They
right.
don't pay
Yeah.
for it, frankly. They get to make dinner for their families. Like, they would come in fully dressed, like nicely dressed, to go to the beach or wherever they were off to. And I wanted to do that. Again, this is when I would feel most stuck and most like I literally felt like a prisoner of war sometimes. And sometimes I was shackled to my bed, literally in handcuffs. Um, Unconsciously at different points, I would try to pull out tubes, but I literally felt like confined against my will at different points. And anyhow, all of this was coming out in these 4 days, 5 days maybe, where I was crying. But in today's society, you're right, Michael, like, you can't cry, that's when it's a problem. And like then they sent the floor psychiatrist in to see me. And I didn't even know who she was. Like, she walks in, I was in like septic shock, bald as bald could be, like, bad day in the midst of salvage chemotherapy, which is brutal. I had lost every fingernail, every toenail. Like, I mean, salvage chemotherapy is just as brutal as it gets. So bad day. And this woman comes in in this Hawaiian floral print dress. And she's like, well, I'm leaving for Hawaii. And that's like the last thing that I wanted to hear. And I had no clue who she was, but she's holding this clipboard and she's like, I hear you've been crying, and have you been having, like, thoughts? And all of a sudden I was like, jeepers, like, who is she? But B, I think she thinks that my crying isn't healthy, And I was like, no, like, if I were having thoughts, like, to be honest, like, I would just unhook myself from all this. That's all I need to do. And I would just walk away. But no, like, I just need to let this hurt out, because in my view, to be honest, like, it wasn't even in these days that I was just crying about the cancer. I had finally, like, as a young woman, let myself be really vulnerable and cry about things that had hurt from the past, about, we all had bad, silly breakups, or, parenting things that I had always been like, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. But I swear, like, we bottle that emotion down, and call me crazy, but I feel that transfers, it's like, it's energy. It doesn't go somewhere unless we're really processing it and expressing it and getting it out and releasing it. But I don't know, I feel like it transfers into either physical or mental illness, and I felt like I just needed this space to cry. And so I was trying to advocate for myself for that. But like you said, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, just be positive, just be positive.
Oh
And
my God.
how can you be
Yeah.
genuinely positive when you're going through such indignities and your life is on the line and you've got these babies? Like, that's just artificial. And in my view, that's really toxic. I was also reading Lance Armstrong's book at the time. And he, on his path, he had like world famous oncologists, et cetera. And, he wasn't thriving at this one point. And he challenged his oncologist by saying, look, like, I've been positive and, but I'm not getting this success. And then the oncologist, I recall, said back to him, Lance, I've seen the most melancholic of melancholic people thrive on this path, and I've seen the most positive of positive people perish. And I was mad about that originally, but I came to learn later, like, that makes so much sense, because I think actually that toxic positivity, oh, I'm fine, it's no problem, come watch me on my bike, that's killing us, like, that's not a healthy force for our souls. That's not a healthy energy. And to be honest, people ask me a lot, like, what was the magic turnaround for you after surviving this terminal prognosis? And I think it was actually like, I don't know if I'm here from a gift from above. I don't know if I'm here because we like literally our story got out and we were enveloped with forces of love from all corners of this world. People held us in prayer groups and just sent like powerful, it was a powerful force of love. I don't know if I'm here from the green juicing or the waving the magic crystals. I have no idea why. But, in all honesty, I really think that this release, this emotional release, and finally for the first time in my life being really real and having the courage to be really real about the hard emotions that we all experience was kind of my saving grace that almost came too late, because just days after this was when I heard the words of this devastating 2-month terminal prognosis. But Michael, you're right. Like I had to cut that door. I put a sign on the door, to be honest, and I just said, I'm sick. Like I have some infection and I can't take any visitors. Because I had to hone it in. I think I finally realized in that time too, like when we get knocked down, we have some fierce lessons to learn. Like it's, in my view, it's coming to teach us something. We can't heal in the same environment that made us sick. So what is this trying to tell me that I need to do? But we can't hear that when there's so much noise all around us. And so I literally had to like block out everybody, literally, and pretend. I literally pretended saying, "Oh no, my physicians have told me that I need to be isolated." And that wasn't even true. I needed to isolate myself, but I didn't even have the courage at that time to say, this is my own decision. But this is the process, personal development and how you go through this journey. But no, I really needed to like close that door because it was too hard watching all these people, like I said, going to work, going to make dinner, having these nights with their kids, and being at the soccer sidelines to cheer on their babies, getting to put their babies to bed every night. Like it was devastating for me that I just couldn't do that. And so I just really needed to go inwards and really focus on what was in my best interest at that time.
Yeah, you said so many things. One thing when you were talking, there is no why, because Michael's father passed away, and sometimes we're like, why did he pass away? Why is Michael doing well? His cancer was more treatable, Michael's was less treatable. Like there is not a why. I think you just have to kind of accept. Who knows? Is it the positivity? Is the green juice? Is it the letting yourself cry?
Is it
Whatever
the
it is.
prayer
Is it
groups?
the prayer groups?
Yeah.
Like we don't know why, so you
Gosh,
just really
I've
have
been
to.
through so much.
Yeah, we've been through so much, but I agree with you. Like literally, I have it highlighted on my paper before we even started talking, is that there is like a genuine positivity that like comes through you, but it's because you also let yourself go through your genuine emotions. I just feel that so much, that the reason you can be positive, we always say that love has been amazing for us. Like we call it our magic and our miracle, but we always also say that it is not a cure. It is not love that cured us. Love has given us so much. And I feel that from you too. I think
Yeah, and
that,
I think you're right. Thank you for following up on that point because it is really important, right? Like letting those hard emotions out. And it's not for an hour. It's not for like, look what I said. It was what, 4 or 5 days that I just cried and cried and cried and cried and had to advocate for myself to be able to do that. Excuse me. Um, um, but again, in today's society, that's a problem. But once we do that, once we, whatever amount of time it is for you, there are different tools that we can do in our practice to ensure we're not avoiding those hard emotions and ensure that we're
yeah,
experiencing it. But we can't sit in that space forever. Like physically, it's not possible. Like you just can't cry forever. Your body will shift. And so whenever you're ready to come out of that, there are other tools too that can help you shift from that. And then you can, like, you're more naturally at a state where you're just more at ease because you've let out those hard emotions. And then the positivity naturally comes, I think, after that. And
yeah,
I
you
have
have
a
a place
mantra
for it.
where,
You have space for it.
yes,
It's
I have a
not,
mantra
yeah,
too, where like,
it's not
prepare for
sugar
the
on top.
100%, prepare for the worst and expect the best, and um, every day is a gift. And I think I see it that way. And it just makes me live this incredibly rich and bright life now because we just,
You just say
You
everything.
say
You're
everything.
saying everything that we believe in. It's so
We
beautiful.
are, yeah,
But
we're,
I really want to ask you, like, what was your bone marrow transplant experience? Because something really personal to me, and I know the bone marrow transplant was physically was the hardest part for me. So I kind of want to hear about what that
Whoa,
was like for
bone marrow
you.
GVHD. We know
Yeah, the bone
you.
marrow and GVHD, of course, which was
Sure.
horrific.
Sure. So, in all honesty, my donor is my saving grace because devastatingly, again, I did not respond to salvage chemotherapy. But literally the day before I found that out, so it's such an emotional roller coaster. So, July 30th, 2012, my team came racing in saying, Erica, we've got the best news. And I had just had a bone marrow biopsy for which I was going to get the results the next day to see if I had been in remission from this salvage chemotherapy. And just hours after this bone marrow biopsy, the team came racing in saying, we've got the best news. We finally found this bone marrow transplant donor for you. Because my only brother, who's a surgeon back east in Ontario, had not been a match. And so I can't even tell you, like, just with this news, I just felt so lifted, so full of hope, and so sure that I was not only going to survive, but that I was going to thrive. We were allowed to go out that night because we had long since a family wedding that was on the books for that day. And my kids were due to be the ring bearers, my little babies. And so I had already purchased some tuxedos before I was unwell. And I just wanted to go watch them. I was allowed out on this 2 hour pass. I was not allowed to go into the venue because I was too sick. I literally had to watch through a window, but everybody really made it work for me and it was beautiful. I have never felt more beautiful in my whole life, just filled with all of this hope. I had tubes hanging out of my chest. I was bald as bald could be, but I just felt so full of hope from this donor. And so then, literally, the next day at 3 p.m., my team was due to come in and tell me the results, the great news that we were all waiting for from the round of salvage chemotherapy. And I had a few close friends and family in the room. And I don't know about at your institution, your hospital, but everything on the BMT floor and leukemia floor happens like literally on time. And if something is said to happen at 3 o'clock, it happens. Oh no, it happens
Yeah.
at 2:59.
Well,
It's very different for me for lung transplant, but it literally happens at 2:59 for BMT. They're so amazing. But this day I was gabbing away and then I look at the clock and I was like, oh geez, it's 3:20. And the team had been so timely before that. I instantly knew. I was like, something's wrong. And my friends and family were like, oh no, they're just running behind. And I was like, something's wrong. They're always so efficient. And then at 3:40, they came in. And that's when I was given the news of this devastating 2-month terminal prognosis. And I was not only given the news that I had not responded to this round of salvage chemotherapy, but I had only grown much sicker. So I think I had 26% leukemic cells when I first went in. After the next round of chemotherapy, I had 66 or some
oh
percent
my
leukemic
gosh.
cells. And after this round, I think I was close to 90% leukemic cells. I was very sick. And so this is when I was told I had this 2-month terminal prognosis. They were guessing 2 months, somewhere around there, but I was denied all further medical care at that point, except for palliative care. I was no longer eligible to serve as a recipient for this bone marrow transplant. This gift of life that had just been extended to me had been brutally ripped away. Literally, like within a 24-hour period. The emotional roller coaster of this, I can't even describe. Like sounds came out of me that I didn't even know existed at that point. Again, it was July 31st. And I remember just thinking like, oh my gosh, like, do you mean I'm not going to be here for Christmas? Like, what are you talking about?
God.
Like, who's going to make Christmas as special as it needs to be for my kids? Like, I couldn't process. And then just these sounds, like, I can't even describe it, but I realized why the team was late. They needed to get this Hawaiian floral print dress psychiatrist
Oh my
waiting
God.
outside the room, and my friends and family were like, she's not coming in. But I asked to go out on this, on a pass. I asked for a 2-hour pass when I heard that news because I needed the sun on my face. I just needed to recollect myself. And my husband and I just drove down to the beach, and I'll never forget it. Like, it was a beach I had hung out at a million times over and had never seen it in this way before, with that light shining on it. And I just remember thinking, my gosh, like there were so many people out. July 31st, beautiful night. So many people out playing beach volleyball, cycling, running on the beach, having picnics, like just enjoying this lovely evening. And all I could think is that, they just don't have a care in the world and they don't even know
I
it,
know.
you know? and just watching through that lens of almost like pure envy of just, would I ever get to experience that again, and just feeling this heaviness. And anyhow, I returned to the
That's, sorry to
hospital.
interrupt, but that's literally how I feel
Yeah.
all the time, even now with chronic GVHD. So just keep going, but just had to say that it's so
Yeah,
true.
it's really, really hard. And like it's heavy in a way that nobody can understand unless you experience these things.
Yeah.
Um, and anyhow, this time out was what I needed, because I made a plan. And if I had 2 months to live, I was not going to spend it in the hospital.
Right.
I was going to spend every minute that I could with my family. And I fought to go home. And against medical advice, I was like hip hop in the next morning, and I was getting out of that hospital. My friends and family arranged for a second opinion down in Seattle at Fred Hutchinson, which is a leading leukemia institute.
Right.
All my eggs were in that basket. I was so sick driving down. I'll never forget that drive. All my eggs are in that basket, and devastatingly, they gave us the same prognosis. Um,
That was my husband when he
and
was told
so,
to go home,
and
and
it's
we went for
brutal,
a second opinion,
you're looking
and
for any hope. Yeah.
there
And
was
so
none.
I'm so sorry. And so I returned home, and this is when I did exactly what I said. I prepared for the worst. I fully acknowledged the presence of this fire breathing dragon of cancer that could take me out tomorrow. And I prepared for the worst. I made all of the heartfelt memory albums and recordings for my kids, and with tears streaming down my face. And I would do this while they were asleep. I made these huge bins of like memory boxes for them. And I was just like, I knew that they were too little to remember, how much I loved every tiny thing about them. So I was like, how do you paper it all? Like, how do you wrap yourself up in a box?
How old were they,
They were
Erica?
2, and my oldest had just
We
turned
just
5
turned
at that point.
5. Right.
And so they were just babies. And anyhow, I prepared for the worst, but I also expected the best. And by doing so, I pursued any and everything in the natural healthcare realm. And miraculously, to be honest, I expected the best when you ask about the bone marrow transplant donor, only because I knew that this donor existed. My
Yeah.
goal, I'll be very honest, like my leukemic cells were so high, I didn't think it was possible for me to get into remission. But my goal was to convince somebody somewhere in the world to give me a bone marrow transplant, because we had this donor, without being in remission. There were studies happening in Montreal that I was trying to get qualified for. I have no clue. I was so sick. There's no way I could have gotten on a flight. My brother, who's a physician, my brother-in-law was a physician at the time. Everyone was trying to convince Vancouver General Hospital to do the trial that they were doing in Montreal on me here. I was trying to pursue any and everything to stay alive for another day, and really to fuel myself in a way that would maximize the amount of time that I had here on this earth. And if I could stretch it out by another day, if I could change 2 months into 3 months, if I could change 3 months into 4 months, that was my goal. I really wasn't trying to get into remission. But miraculously, by doing all of this, I did attain what's called a spontaneous remission in the medical world, when you attain remission without chemotherapy.
Wow.
And so I started to grow neutrophils, and miraculously I had brought they did another bone marrow biopsy, and miraculously I was down under 5% leukemic cells, after pursuing all of these things like green
This was
juice.
before the transplant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pardon me?
This was before the transplant.
Yeah, because I wasn't qualified for the transplant unless I was in remission. And yeah, so before the transplant. And so, yeah, I did all this green juicing. I had pretty much had a vegetarian diet before cancer. And all of these sources that were sent to us from all corners of the world were saying, and some of them were physicians, some of them were traditional Chinese medical doctors, some of them were naturopathic physicians. Interestingly enough, they all said, Erica, like, you need so much more hardcore animal protein. Like, it needs to swim, squawk, run, jump, fly with every single meal. And I was like, no, like, that just doesn't resonate with me. But to be very honest, what did I have to lose? Everything I had done to that point wasn't working. And so I started incorporating eggs and other proteins. And what else did I do? Oh, I adopted this powerful practice of meditation, and I practiced transcendental meditation and mindfulness, and I did a lot of energy work. And I don't know. I don't know why I'm here. I learned to connect with myself in a really different way than I had ever done before. I really transformed my thoughts, my vision of the world, and the energy that I carried within myself. I somehow just transformed in that time. And I miraculously attained this spontaneous remission. And then I was eligible to serve again as this recipient for this bone marrow transplant, which was
Right.
like the quote unquote cure to prevent against relapse from such an aggressive leukemia. And if there was such even one little cell floating around in there, who knows, would it have come back?
Right.
And fortunately, my donor was still ready to do the transplant. He was a 10 out of 10 donor match, perfect match for me. I don't know how they match it because my blood type oddly changed on
From
this path. And
From
Germany.
Germany?
from Germany, yes.
I had a
And
10
10
out of
out of
10
10
from
from
Germany
Germany.
oh,
also.
no way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know how they match it. Like my blood type changed after this. Like I've adopted, um, his name is Fabian. I know him. He's amazing, amazing.
Mm.
But Fabian's blood type of A positive. My blood type before was O positive. Like, how do you change blood types? Like it's just crazy.
Yeah.
But he is this young mountaineering adventurer, and for all the hope that he brought me to stay the course and to keep hoping, when I was given that 2-month terminal prognosis, for all the hope he brought me. His last name is Hoppe. Like it's
I
crazy. I call him my hope star, but my hope hero. But he's just amazing. He's this young mountaineering adventurer, and yep, he just gave me my second chance at life. And I grew strong after the bone marrow transplant. It was difficult, like you said. I had whole body radiation. I had to do the round of salvage chemotherapy again to just ablate all of my own bone marrow. The whole body
sounds like
radiation
AdGam.
was
Yeah.
really tough. And then I had the transplant. It was I was out of hospital really soon after. It was 2 weeks. But then I ended
What?
up yeah, but then I ended up getting really sick. I had a tummy infection of C. diff because there's
Yeah,
so
I'd
many
C. diff.
compromised.
C. diff
I
was
had
not
C.
fun.
diff and I had rejection in my tummy all at the same time. And I ended up having to be readmitted, and I was denied food, water, medication. Like nothing could cross my lips. Like I was just
Same.
Yeah, I was on
Acute
TPN.
GVHD, same thing.
But I just have to say, I
yeah.
really love how you call it tummy.
I know.
It's really cute.
We always say GI.
It's cute how you say tummy. It's like, I just say GI. I'm like
And
used
you're
to
like,
calling.
and you're like tummy rejection. We're like, oh,
That's cute.
acute GVHD, GI GVHD. Yes, but that's way cuter. It really, it sounds way better.
Anyhow, like I just remember that time, and you're right, it was so hard. I craved like I'm a really healthy eater, don't get me wrong, but like I was craving alphagetti from when I was like 3, and
Yeah.
like all these things that I hadn't eaten in years. Like and this lasted for 8 weeks when I was denied all of these things. And you just want like
Yeah.
even an ice chip. Like I couldn't, like there was nothing I could have. And it was really, really hard. And I was isolated in this room. But right behind me in another room was this amazing young mama who was also really struggling. She had had lymphoma, stage 4 lymphoma, and needed a bone marrow transplant. And she and I had become quite close. And she and I would text all day,
Oh,
just back and forth because we were both isolated. But yeah, we
That
would
was
text.
just like me. There was a girl that was my age,
Yeah,
and we had bone marrow transplants a month apart, and we would be texting while we're rooms apart in the hospital. So that just reminded me of that, which is
yeah,
such a
of
such a
powerful
similar
course.
story.
yeah, you really need those same people
Yeah.
that really get it on that level. And so that was such a powerful connection for me. So it was really hard. I think a couple months after, once I finally got back from that, I was home for Christmas. And then by Valentine's Day, I had had septic pneumonia because you're still quite weak. But I really did grow strong. I was eventually back to hiking, really steep ascents here on the West Coast. And I was teaching my babies to ski and Whistler. Like you have to be really fit to be holding a 3-year-old at the time, like bent
Yeah.
forward. And anyhow, but it was very short lived, this burst in health when you're talking about GVHD. And what GVHD is basically you receive this new bone marrow, which produces new blood cells, and your blood cells, soar all over you. So everything is up for rejection, right? Everything is like your bone marrow can say, shoot, I don't recognize any of this, and it can happen for a lot of us in our skin, in our tummies, and having this lung complication that I ended up having is very rare. But as I was hiking, I started to, as you can tell, I talk a lot, and I couldn't talk. I
I
couldn't
talk a
talk on
lot
my
too. I'm like,
I couldn't talk on my
really?
hikes anymore. And I was just running out of air. And people started to pass me and they're like, oh, thanks for letting me pass on these narrow trails. But I was like, girl, like, I'm not trying to let you pass. I just couldn't seem to get in enough air. And I mentioned it to my physicians, but they were like, oh my gosh, Erica, like, you're just so lucky to be alive. And I felt that too. They're like, you're so much more active than anyone else after transplant. And I was like, okay, no problem. Like, I'm just happy to walk the seawall. I'll stay flat. Like, I'm just so happy to be alive. Like, and so I transferred just to walking the seawall. But then within like maybe 2 months at most, the shortness of breath even caught up with me on the flats. And it was just this really progressive cycle that everybody had missed, where my new hardy immune system, this new blood type that changed from O negative to A positive, woke up and said, shoot, we do not recognize these lungs.
Right.
And literally like obliterated my lungs through this process of bronchiolitis obliterans. And unlike leukemia, which is so fast, the entire world is ripped out from under you. This was a process that I was just getting steadily worse every day, and there was nothing that I could do to stop the process. And it was so defeating because, I had just felt like I conquered this terminal prognosis with all of these natural healthcare pursuits. And now this process was happening in my body that I had zero control over. And I referred to it to my kids because, this stuff is hard for a lot of the general public to understand, let alone I've got 2 babies. And, I would explain it to my kids, like, mommy now has 2 friends in the playground and the friends aren't getting along. And there was no way that I could, none of my green juicing, none of my meditation, like there was nothing I could do to get these friends to get along. My lungs were just getting worse and worse and getting literally holes in them by the day. And this was a brutal time to stay the course. They had really upped my immunosuppression and my prednisone. I ended up from that developing these steroid related cataracts, where I was
We
literally
can relate to everything you're saying.
Do you have necrosis?
Do you have AV?
Necrosis?
No, I haven't had any AVN. No. Mm-mm.
So
I've had, that's like my worst thing is I have to get
from the
I
steroids.
have to get both my knees replaced. I'm getting my first knee in a few months actually.
Shoot, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I was just standing at a soccer. I haven't not had that, but I was standing at a soccer game. It happened like this. And I remember saying to my husband, I was like, did a cloud roll in? And he's like,
Wow.
no, why? And I'm like, I just can't see any faces. And I thought I was having a visual migraine. But it ended up being these steroid related cataracts. And it was brutal. Like I couldn't read. I lost my ability to drive. I couldn't read a book. I couldn't see the television. Like it was so bad. Everyone's like, just rest. But like, how do you rest if you can't do anything? You can't even see. And, I just felt like I lost all of my independence. And gosh, if I walked across my family kitchen, like I felt like I was going to lose capacity of all bodily function because my oxygen saturation was so low, and staying the course of every day was so brutally hard in this time because gosh, I just was so weak. I felt 80 pounds. I was crazy sick on full-time oxygen. And I was told that my only course of survival would be a double lung transplant. And I was just like, what? Like for something great to happen to me, something terrible had to happen to someone else. And how do you grapple with that, And it was really, really hard. But I always say, your worst day on the calendar can always change into your best.
Oh my God, girl.
What?
That's always
No,
that's in our speech too. I say that.
There's no way.
It's the thing that I usually say at the end of our talks. Is
Well, and it's so
we
true.
made our worst day,
Our
our
best
July
day.
14th, 2020. We made our worst day our best day.
Aw.
That is so funny.
That's so funny.
We just have a lot.
We have a lot in common.
Well, July 31st, 2012 was, like I said, the day I heard I had 2 months to live.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, only 3 years. Gosh, it was such a whirlwind. July 31st, 2015 was the day I got the call saying new lungs were waiting.
That's
And I had my transplant on August 1st. And, a lot of hiccups along the way. I always say small price to pay for the gift of life. When you say how hard it's been, I hear you. And it's kind of like, they need to have a conversation that they kind of miss, when you have this transplant, you may cure yourself of cancer, but you do kind of trade it for a life of GVHD, in many ways.
but not everyone.
Not everyone.
Yeah,
Not
I know
everyone. Like,
I know a few people my age who actually have had transplants. Actually, the
and
girl I was
nothing.
telling you about, she
Oh
had the
yeah.
transplant and completely normal, no GVHD, same cancer as you actually, AML. And then a guy actually, he had AML too. Same thing, like transplant, he's completely good. So it's like 50-50 is what I've heard. And typically
Yeah.
adults get it more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've always said, like I said before, every time I fall, I realize I have more lessons to learn.
Exactly,
And
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I really
definitely.
learned with my lungs, and I still had more to learn. And everything that I've gone through just empowers me to live this rich life. And hearing the words, people are always like, oh my gosh, like, how can you be happy, going through everything you go through? Because I still go to the hospital a ton for checks and there's still so much on the go. But, I get to be here today. Having heard I
Yeah.
have 2 months to live, and life isn't easy. Like, I'm also divorced as a result of this path. My husband chose to leave, less than 6 weeks after I was finally home from hospital. And losing that family unit of 4 was devastating. There were so many hardships, and it's not that I deny those hardships, but I assure you, when you hear the words, you have 2 months to live, everything else after that is butter.
Your
Like
perspective changes
100%,
100%. Yeah.
100%. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, life is not easy. From all the treatments I've received, the high dose immunosuppression for my lungs, which is much higher than they do with bone marrow transplant, plus the salvage chemotherapy, plus the whole body radiation, all the treatments that have saved my life also now risk it in other ways. And
Yeah.
so I end up with, you know, hundreds of skin cancers that are constantly being taken off. I've lost completely the vision in my right eye. Um, I'm quite osteoporotic, although I still ski. I've had some good falls. I haven't broken yet. So, I just really focus on, despite what it looks like on paper, oh, my kidney function is really impaired. But I feel well, and I don't know how. But I feel very, very well. And that's what I go on. I always try to say, like, we can defy what it says in our medical records by how we choose to live and how we present. And like I was saying before the show, I think my favorite thing is when I walk in to see a new physician and they're like, you look nothing like what I expected you to look like, and that's just how we should all strive to be. There's no
Yeah.
one, there's no one on this earth who, if you look at, a lot of us are just waiting to be healthy or waiting to graduate or waiting to do something to be happy, But if you look at the spectrum of, healthiness, we're all somewhere on the spectrum. None of us are way over here, but life is really, really short and we all have to choose to be happy right now,
It's it,
irregardless of if I'm sitting at the hospital for a day getting 2 transfusions as I need to do
yeah.
every month, or excuse me, whatever I'm doing. And you find the blessings in those moments. And so for me, like, literally being in the hospital, I really shifted my perspective somehow to, okay, like, I love these connections that I'm having. I learned so much from people that I never would have expected to learn things from. Like,
Yeah.
one of my one of the lunch ladies, she would come in a lot, and she had just come in after one of my physicians had left, and my physician had been in the room talking to me, and when he walked out, he closed the door, but she was putting my tray over by the window on the windowsill because she knew I wasn't going to eat it. There was no way I could eat in that time, and I had lost so much weight, and she put it over there. And then she was walking out and she sees that my physician closed the door, and she was just like, okay, well, I'm not allowed to close the door. I'm not allowed to be in here with the door closed, but he closed the door. Did you see he closed the door? And I was like, uh-huh. And then she was just like, she goes back over to the tray. She picks up a banana. Yeah. And she's like, Erica, you just need to look at this banana and say, banana, you look good. You just need to eat this banana today. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to try this. But this was like literally the first introduction that I needed to kickstart mind over matter, and we can all learn these powerful lessons from literally, these are angels on our path who are here to teach us, to propel us, and if we're open to hearing those lessons, there's so many lessons that come with these journeys that really help us live these like incredible lives on the other side of it.
I hope everyone is listening to like every word you're saying. It's just like you're just hitting all of these things that we believe. We've had a million angels. And the other thing is when you were talking about happiness, yeah, I don't know if you know who Marcy Shimoff is, but she talks about happy for no reason. And one thing she talks about is there's like this myth of I'll be happy when, and we're always, I think so many, it's like, I'll be happy when this happens. I'll be happy when this happens. But no, you cannot wait. You have to be happy. Like, now where you are, because you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. And it really is a perspective thing. I believe that so strongly. I mean, you said to me earlier, you said, I'm so sorry you've been through so much. And I do think like I have been through so much on paper, but at the same time, I've had like equally more, not equally, like a billion gifts through that, like the angels that we've met, like just
the lessons we've learned, the opportunities we've had. It's just,
we literally did it this morning. We made a short video talking about pain and like, accepting that pain and that it's there to teach you something. And actually it's there. It sucks, but there is the beauty in it. You don't get rid of the pain, but there's like so much beauty in it and learning and perspective. Everything you're saying, I'm just like, I want to go through that and hug you. And yeah, we definitely share so much perspective. Cancer does that though, I think a lot.
Yeah.
If you're open to it.
Like, our minds are conditioned and we have to challenge the thoughts that we have because we can go down a path. I literally felt, like I said, a prisoner of war, but if I stay there, that's not going to serve me. Right. And so I find to get out of our head of that struggle, and I'm never saying to deny that struggle, own it, experience it, feel it.
Of course.
But to get out of our head, we need to do action steps, and really challenge those thoughts that can be very pervasive, and choose to see your world through a different lens, because it is a choice at the end of the day. Two people can walk through the same circumstance and both hold very different stories at the end of it, right? And those stories are structured based on, our past traumas, how we've grown up, generational stuff, so much that comes into it. But really challenge your own thoughts and challenge how you choose to see it. I'll give you an example. So I'll still wake up some nights now, in the midst of like being cozy and all at home, and in the midst of a sleep where I just wake up breathless, frantic, and I'll be sitting up stark, very erect, and I'm like padding like all over frantically, trying to ascertain, like the tubes, like where are they? Trying to feel for my hair, trying to feel for my fingernails, trying to feel for the handcuffs that I was stuck to the bedside rails with. And I'm trying to figure out, it's like I can hear all the beeps and the buzzes and the screams of agony from the patients down the halls. And it's like I'm just reliving it, and then I go to look for the white walls of my hospital room. And then eventually, like, I'm just in this zone. I don't even know for how long. My heart is racing, and it's just very much a panic attack, from PTSD. Very much. I own this. But then I go to look for these white walls, and when we separated, I painted my bedroom walls for these very moments fuchsia. And so eventually I start to see, I start to see that my walls are not white, but they're fuchsia. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm home. Oh my gosh, my kids are down the hall. Like, oh my gosh, I'm alive. Like
I was going to say, I'm alive.
Like this is what we did. And it starts to flood in my mind what we did that day. And so, like I said, these are very much episodes of PTSD, and I'm not denying that, I own that 100%, but I choose to call them because they are because after I realize I'm alive, I'm so overwhelmed with emotion, and I just start crying these heartfelt tears because I get to still be mom for my kids, and I get to make dinner and do all these things I couldn't do, like and serve in the ways that I do. And I'm just so overcome with emotion and gratitude for this moment of now that I now call these very obvious moments of PTSD. I call them my gratitude attacks.
Yeah.
Because they never let me forget how lucky I am, right? And I almost like welcome them now, but it changes your perspective on your hardship, and we can all just pick up a different set of lenses to see our world through.
100%. The world doesn't change. It's how you see the world that changes.
Yeah.
It's so true.
It's so true.
Yeah.
I love that. That's beautiful. It's true. It's good to remember, not to dwell, but to remember, so you really do appreciate. I love that you call your PTSD gratitude.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much. Wait, you want to say something? Did I interrupt you?
No, you keep going.
No, we just have I just want to say like a million things to you.
Will you?
You're amazing.
Yeah,
I
you're
mean, we could talk
amazing.
forever. We've been on here already almost an hour, and we could just talk to you forever because you're amazing. Okay, you do a coaching program, like an 8-week coaching program as well. I just want to make sure we tell everybody this. So you have risetoday.com. You're amazing. You serve as an empowerment mindset health expert, which is obvious if you guys listen to this podcast up till now. I don't need to tell anyone that. You've like thrived through everything you've been through. You support, I love, you're like us. Like you've changed your your life before was service. I know you were a chiropractor, but it was a whole wellness center. So you were already in that world, but now you've really changed it. Like you are just in service and coaching, and you're an amazing coach, because if anyone needs free coaching, they should just rewind and listen to this episode over and over again. You've written a book. You're writing your next book. You've done a TEDx. You're a keynote speaker. Oh my God.
Well, it's just, I breathe through the lungs of another, and I've got the bone marrow of another flowing through all parts of me, and I'm just so compelled to pay it all forward, and do our part in this world. And it's incredibly rewarding to get to serve. I feel like this, after walking out of the hospital and facing divorce and life as a single mom, I had to dust myself off. I couldn't return back to my profession. I'll never have the physical strength that I used to have. And, my world at the hospital is quite still extensive. And this world of being such like, COVID, is kind of my world all the time, just being so immune compromised. Right. And so treating 60 people every day was no longer in my best interest, because small space, tight knit connections. And I would just be kind of a sitting duck for all these infections. So I couldn't return to work in my own profession that I was trained to do. And so it was a really hard time, having to dust myself off and pivot and navigate. And all of this kind of just unfolded naturally, because people started at the hospital, physicians started to ask me to speak at their medical conferences and share my story. And that's kind of how it naturally evolved. And then companies started to ask me to serve as an inspirational speaker and motivational speaker. And so that's how the speaking part evolved. But the coaching part, a lot of people would just be like, how did you stay the course? Like, how did you get into remission? Like I said, I don't know how I got into remission, but I do think mindset plays a big part of it too, and yeah. And then the podcast, I had just been approached to do a podcast by my amazing magician producer behind the scenes, who's just this wonderful gentleman who really helps me propel the message that I do. So that's really fun too. It's called the Rise Today Inspirational Podcast, and the coaching just evolved because everybody was asking for help, and I put together a little program that was kind of the biggest steps that I had practiced along the way, and just to share the awakenings that I had learned.
Yeah, for us too, it's been a very organic. We always say it just happens organically. We just started sharing a little bit, just like to friends, and then little by little. And the podcast was to share the story. It was also to help lift us up. We always say, helping others is a great way to help yourself. And so we just kind of went with that. And it was the same. It was organic. I love that it just happened naturally for you.
I think really... it's like really important too, because our focus point really determines a lot about our success. And being, a divorced mom, sometimes my kids are with dad, and what would I do, in the
Yeah.
days? Like, I would just be so probably melancholic, focused on, oh, poor me, like my health is, the way it's at, and I have to go to the hospital or whatever. But it shifts my focus onto positive pursuits,
Yeah.
and giving back and serving I feel it's just my calling.
We feel the same.
Us too.
We feel exactly the same. That's so funny. Oh my gosh, usually we try to get to some fun questions. Do we have time?
I don't know if we can ask one fun question, I think.
Okay, which one?
Let's ask one fun question before we close this off.
Oh, we have so many fun ones though.
Okay, I'll just have this. This is the funnest one. If you had any superpower in the world, what would it be?
Superpower.
Oh, superpower. That's a really good question.
It could be anything, because my superpower was just being healthy, is what I said.
No, but then flying.
But it could be flying.
Like you said flying once too, because you've answered this question
no,
multiple
I
times.
have answered this multiple times. It's true.
Superpower. I think it would be having a magic wand and granting 3 wishes.
Yeah, wait a second.
That's cheating.
That's cheating.
That's
no,
cheating.
Once we also, because we have another question that's like, if you had a wish.
You're tough. All right. I guess, I'll be honest. I don't know if a lot of people say this, but I would want to live forever. I love life. I do.
I don't think anyone said that.
No one has said that. That's cool.
I do. I love life. Yeah.
I want to teleport because all like our guests are like in different places, and I want to teleport and hug them. And my daughter's in Vancouver, and I would teleport and hug you, and then I'd go hug her.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Yeah,
I'm really happy that we've connected. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
You're amazing. We feel very connected to you right now. I can tell you.
I'll have to have you both on my show too.
Yes, definitely. That would be amazing.
We would love it. This resonated so much with us. Okay, so
this will be an official goodbye from your host Michael Kramer and
your official other host Ashley Kramer, and beautiful, amazing, incredible, inspiring, everything. Erica Harris, Dr. Erica Harris, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.